first year, not knowing how many books an illustrator did. I had quit my job, so I was scared to death of being out there. I didn't have an entrepreneur in the family. Everybody had, kind of went into teaching and medicine or art or something like that, and so I didn't have anybody any way to gauge. And so leaving a job without having benefits and all that kind of stuff. So I did that many books, and in the first group of books that I did, actually, only one's not in print now, which is I've done 58 books, and so of that first group, only one's not in print. I think about 8 are out of print out of 58, which is pretty good.
Really good.
And so one of those books was Down the Road, and they made a big hoopla about Down the Road, and this, they're like, let's go ahead and get a Caldecott. I'm like, it's up for the Caldecott. Let's go out for the Caldecott. And I didn't know what a Caldecott was. And so I'm like, okay, good, yeah, everybody's excited, I guess I am. And when it didn't win, because they had already, up to the last day, it's like on the table with, the last book, an Officer Buckle won. I remember that clearly. And so I realized at that point, I'm never going to get excited about awards again. And so, but not to say that, I should say not excited about the anticipation of the award. When the award calls, when that phone call comes at 7 o'clock in the morning, you get, it changes, and you kind of,
you allow yourself to get excited.
You're jumping around because it's a big thing, because one, the librarians are on the other end of the phone, and they're excited and shouting, and they must be on a speakerphone because you can hear all of them. And I tell the kids when I'm at school, I said, Spy sounds like this. Congratulations, you won the Caldecott King Award! Or you won the Caldecott Honor, and you're running around the house screaming, And then the calls come, congratulatory calls. Those people are calling and congratulating, thank you, great job, what have you. And that's all day long, and it's great. And so it's exciting. It really is. It's very exciting. But I realized early on that if I started to think about how, whether or not how should I paint this to get it in the contention for the award, then I'm really off base. And there are people with some great talent in the industry has never won, that I thought maybe should have. And so, like Eric Carr, I think he does care, but when I found out that like the Very Hungry Caterpillar has sold like a book a minute for the past 35 years, like I don't really think he really cares. No, secretly I'm sure he does, because of the accolade, the attention. But a book a minute, I think that's an award in and of itself. That's an award in and of itself.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So what did illustrating I Want to Be Free mean to you personally?
Those, I've done more probably slave narratives than anyone in the industry, and that one was a very powerful book, and this was one of them that was not a true slave narrative. The guy who actually did it was a story that he'd been thinking about for a long, long time. He ended up, I think he's like, when he actually finally finished, he was in his late 70s, early 80s. And so this was his baby. And that for me, being non-African American, the author, that for me just had a lot of meaning for me, and it was a tough story to do. And they're all, when you're dealing with that kind of listening and reading that kind of that narrative, those are especially the true slave narratives, the ones that have been done from the gathered going to WPA, when the authors went around to interview the ex-slaves and gathering their stories. And when you read those stories and then doing the research, because I immerse myself so much in the research, you know, it becomes, I sleep with it, and the stories become dreams, you know, and the experiences become part of the dreams, and that story of this run, this like the night running book, you know, there's another book called Night Running and Night Boat for Freedom, and all these escape, you know, from the plantation kind of books, and involving children, which is really, I think that makes it even much more powerful, that these are children, not adults, that are had made that journey and made that sacrifice, that decision, you know, and the survival. And imagine what it must feel like for a child that, you know, is 9 years old to say, I'm going, you know, not knowing that. How do you follow the North Star and understand that, and what happens in the woods, and I can't imagine that, you know. And so I'm often thinking of the child, you know, how does that feel as a child, and then you often kind of put yourself in that position. So of course you say, you know, we always say, if it was me, I would be doing this, but in reality, it's a whole different place, a whole different ballgame. And so the part of that book, that power that I love, is the magical part, you know, where the child's hand touches the anklet, the yoke, or the shackle, and it releases. You know. That to me is saying, if you look at I have a whole other career as a fine artist, and I'm doing these series of these little icon paintings of talking about how important our children are, and that we really need to understand this process that we do of scraping these lottery tickets to change our lives, to make our lives more richer. And I'm saying, if you realize that our children are that power, they have that power, only you need to know to start scratching them as much as you scratch these tickets. And so that's kind of the element in that book, you know, that child will set you free. And the children are understanding that. You see what I'm trying to capture and what I'm trying to convey immediately. A lot of times the parents or the adults do not. The Other Side is one of those books. Each Kindness is another one of those books. Across the Alley. Lily Brown's paintings, Sometimes My Mama Gets Angry. It's a tough book about a little girl whose mother is going through she's suffering from bipolar disorder, and dealing with that, and hearing the stories, because when you read those and share those stories, then they tell you about their experiences. And that's one of the things that I like doing that in schools when I'm going to visit. I'm trying to get the teachers to understand what they need to understand in the situation, because they come into a classroom and many of them have not gone to the homes and to the churches of these schools, of these students that they're actually, you know, involved with. And so they make assumptions, and the teacher should never make an assumption. And the assumptions that are made or not made is that, well, not knowing, I should say, that some of these kids are coming from really tough situations on a regular day, on a regular basis. And mom is angry all the time, you know, and she's angry for a number of reasons. She's angry because she's doing this job by herself, you know, and or she's coming back, and dad, who's been waiting for this job, and then the notice was supposed to come at the job, and she's anticipating the child gets home and finds out that the job didn't come, you know. So here's another month or however long that anguish has to, you know, continue. And those are the kind of things. And so these books help that, because it starts the dialogue. It helps teachers start to, because when they start, you know, because the kids, they'll tell you, you know, that my brother, they just found my brother, you know, the other day. They found him in this, and they're going to deal with that. And so that becomes the type of stories that I do. If you look at my work, the common thread of my work is that they're really strong human interest stories, stories that really are dealing with strong emotional issues. And I think the publishers now recognize that if it's an emotional content context that comes across at an editor's desk, 9 times out of 10 they would probably get me to do it. And so that's what I do, and I don't mind. That's what I do. I have to be careful. I remember hearing Abby Lincoln. She was talking to Billie Holiday. She said, came to her talking about how she's ailing, and Abby told her that she needs to stop singing those sad songs because they're like a prayer that you say over and over to yourself. And so that's the same here. You know, there's a time when I need to stop doing those sad books, and I pick up a manuscript like Louis Brown's paintings. You know, it becomes free and it's a different experience.
Where do you see children's books going in the next 10, 20 years? Do you see fundamental changes afoot? Or?
I'm concerned about it. It's because now you're hearing authors, publishers talking about texts are becoming, books are heavy text now, and we're going to need to, you'll see, actually I'm seeing it already, that the text is becoming lighter and lighter. The books are becoming more non-threatening, and not dealing with tough issues anymore. They're trying to move away from that. And that's okay for as long as you have the other, as long as there's a balance. And so I'm concerned that there won't be a balance. The stories, the solid stories, the quiet stories. Sometimes those quiet stories are very important and very important. Thinking of a quiet story of mine.
Well, The Other Side is a quiet story.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I was trying
There are many of them.
There's been many, but yeah.
Each Kindness.
Each Kindness.
Each Kindness, yeah. Each Kindness.
That was well received and
Yeah.
is a present day.
It was.
Yeah.
Jackie is this.
Well, it's the
Yeah.
it's the combo.
Jackie can tell a quiet story in a way, man. That, just
Two
makes-
big names to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
attach 2 big names to a quiet story and it'll get done.
Yeah. Jackie tells a quiet story in a whole different, process. It makes you kind of stand up and pay attention. But no, there are just quiet stories that. This T.K. Shatash. It's a very quiet story, but very powerful because children are dealing with grandparents now who are going through the issues of losing facilities, and how they deal with that. Tough things. And so, do we stop telling those stories in place of, kitten stories? I think there's room for both. I think it's needed for both. Our society hasn't changed. Issues continue to be the same. We still face the same things that we've been facing when you go back to Bright April.